and then Seth Emerson.
Hey, Kirby, I guess I'll just start with the obvious question. What happens to the offense without George Pickens now?
Well, I mean, we had game we played last year without George for several games, and I thought offensively we had a good plan, for Florida, and happened to lose another receiver in that game. We had our opportunities against Florida, and he wasn't out there. So George will be dearly missed because he's talented. He works really hard. He makes our whole team better. And I know that's obvious in terms of what he does offensively, but he makes all the defensive backs better. So when you talk about challenging guys, there's no greater matchup for a young DB to go against than go against George. So that part we don't control, but what we do control is how we respond to it. And George knows injuries are part of the game, and we'll have other guys step up. And I'm very hopeful that George gets well and is able to come back. So,
Kirby, in terms of other guys, I guess this puts anew the question on Dominic and Marcus. What is the latest on how their rehabs are going and their potential timetables?
Yeah, it really puts it on everybody. I mean, I think Brock Bowers, I think Darnell, Fitz, James, Amir, Dejon, Kendall. I mean, you got a lot of guys that, we'll try to find ways to get the ball to them. So I don't look at it as a receiver pressure. I look at it as an opportunity for other guys to step up and do some special things. So, but Rosamy's rehabbing. He's been out there doing walkthroughs, coaching the young receivers. He's really into it. Dom, very smart, understands it, and he's rehabbing as well. So both those guys are running and doing things, but they're not cleared to practice yet.
All right, let's go to Chip Towers and then Mark Weiser.
Yeah, Coach, you touched on this a little bit. I just wondered if it was about, coming up with an X that could do a lot of the things that George Pickens could do, or just, re-emphasize in other areas where the ball goes, just depending on the talent that emerges at those other spots.
Yeah, you take your best 11 football players and you try to find ways that, that could be 1 back, 3 tight end. That could be 3 back, 1 tight end. That could be 5 wides, no backs, no tight ends. You find your best football players and you find ways to get them the ball. And that's what I think Coach Monken does a great job of. So he's going to try to exploit whoever you're playing's weaknesses, and he's going to try to use our strengths to do that with. We have plays we call that are the same plays that we call in all personnel groupings. It's just another way to get another guy the ball, another playmaker the ball. So we lost a guy who's a pretty good playmaker, but we've got other guys we think are good playmakers, and we'll just try to find ways to get them the ball.
Kirby, when you talk about other guys that are big playmakers, obviously, Jermaine Burton and Karis Jackson showed that a good bit last season. Can you kind of assess, how they might move along in their careers without George in terms of attention that the defenses will, usually give to him?
We really didn't have that. I mean, I think that's a misnomer that people give, attention or role coverage or things like that. We didn't really have that last year. I mean, the games he didn't play, it didn't matter. And then the games he did, it wasn't like we got a lot of special coverages. So I don't think we'll get that. I think we're enough run oriented, and we have strong enough offensive line that people have to honor and commit to the run, and they're not able to put a lot of doubles out there on people. But those guys played well last year, and I'd like to think both of them are going to be better this year, right? They're more experienced. Certainly in Jermaine's case, he'll be more experienced, and we got to find a supporting cast around him. And, we got the players to do that, and that's the most important thing.
All right, let's go to Jake Rowe, and then we'll go to Jed May.
Kirby, I guess kind of switching gears here a little bit. We talked to a couple guys earlier this week, Channing Tindall and Amir Speed. And, neither one of those guys, they both played quite a bit, special teams, all that stuff, but they've never been the 40, 50 snap a game type guys in their career. And one of them is a senior, one of them's a 5th-year senior. Does it make you smile as a coach a little bit, or count your blessings, or however you want to state it, that you do have those guys in a transfer portal age that have stuck around for so long for their opportunity, and now they're in position to maybe take on a bigger role?
Yeah, I'm excited to see the work both of them do. They're both extremely talented, but they're blessed with great work ethic. And since they've gotten here, they're total program guys. They've been major factors on special teams, which that's been a really high quality area here. I mean, Amir Speed was probably one of the most elite kickoff return people on the front line in the country, and people respect that. Channing Tindall has been a starter on punt since he got here, and he's been a dominant player on a lot of special teams. He's played on third downs a lot. He's had sack production. So, you know, I got a lot of respect for those guys and the work they do. As far as the transfer portal and staying here, I mean, that's the way it should be. I mean, you should want to play for your university. You should want to get your degree from university. And when you get your degree, then it certainly opens up doors to go other places. But, you know, a Georgia degree is worth a lot more than maybe going somewhere else and just playing more. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're not going to be a starter at Georgia, what makes you think you're going to be a starter in the NFL? You know, so it doesn't work that way. It's too easy to say that I couldn't start at Georgia, so maybe I'll go start somewhere else. How about getting your degree, play for the university, play for your teammates, and try to win a championship, which to me is special. And those guys have aspirations of going to the NFL, but there's nowhere better to train for that than the University of Georgia. They get a great workout place. They got a great staff. They're developing. And we've had, you know, a lot of guys that didn't necessarily start every game that have gone on and played at the NFL.
Hey, Kirby, just to ask, you know, about one more receiver, Justin Robinson's a guy that's, you know, really intriguing, just physically, you know, a bigger guy. What have you seen from him this spring in terms of, I guess, maybe taking that next step in his development, you know, just as a receiver?
Well, Justin's come a long way since getting here. You know, he got here last year, and then the pandemic hit. He didn't get to really go through a spring that would have helped him from a competitive standpoint. And then he was dinged up, you know, in the fall. He had a couple of different injuries, and then he got hurt late in the year and didn't get to do some things. And then he's had some knee stuff. But he sits, you know, he didn't get to do all the off-season workouts. And I always like for those young guys to get the mental toughness of the off-season workouts. And he started to get some of that towards the end, and it really pushed him and challenged him. And he's shown some flashes in the last couple of days. If he can sustain and keep that same like energy, juice, and level, there's times he really practices hard. There's other times I think he's trying to save and condition himself. But when he really goes, he's been a good factor for us. He's a big guy that's hard to, you know, it's hard to match up with. And so he's different than some of our other guys because of the size.
All right, let's go to Jason Butt and then Mike DeBerry.
Hey, Kirby, you brought up Darnell Washington earlier. Just, you know, how big is it that for him to go through this spring, entering his second year with the team?
It's big for everybody to go through spring, right? I mean, all the guys, it's a huge deal to get the spring practice. That, I mean, this would have been, you know, really his first spring practice anyway. And he's grown a lot. He's a lot smarter. He's in better condition. He's in better mental toughness state. You know, part of being a good player is pushing through practice and being able to sustain. He struggled to sustain through tough practices last year, and he's done that this year. He's practiced a little harder. He's doing some good things. He's still, you know, really big. I mean, he's 275, 280 pounds. So he's a different kind of matchup guy.
Mike DeBerry, do you have a question? All right, let's go to Vance Levy and then Dan Matthews.
Kirby, you know, before the spring got started, you know, talked about how y'all spent a lot of the off season on the DNA and stuff like what's my why. How's that translating into on the field? And then also, how is George doing as far as, you know, mentally, and you think he's going to embrace the role he now can have on the team?
Yeah, our school sessions have continued. We don't stop that when spring practice starts. That would be probably counterproductive. So we've continued those every Wednesday. We come together and have 20 to 25 minutes in small groups, and we rotate coaches around so everybody gets to visit with the different groups. And our guys have been awesome. They've been great. We've worked on different DNA components each time we've met, and they've been really good. They've been good for me because I feel like you get to see the players in a different light, and you get to share personal things, and it's just good. It's good group talk. It's good connection. But George has been part of all those. Ironically, our topic yesterday was resiliency, which was picked long before the injury happened to George. But we talked a lot about Alex Smith's injury and his road to recovery and the things he had to overcome. So the guys got to see that, and that's a pretty gruesome injury when you talk about those kind of injuries. But I think George will embrace the role. George is he loves football. He loves football. He will be around our players and coaching those guys and trying to help them every way he can, which I think is huge.
Yeah, Coach, a quick two-parter. The first one is, I mean, you mentioned about everybody having to chip in now. I mean, receivers, tight ends, running backs. Do you feel good about the guys you have in those numbers? And then the second part is, are you led to believe that there is a chance that you could see him?
I'm sorry, you went in and out there, but I will drop a big go dogs there. But I'll let you your own question if you need to. I couldn't understand you.
No, sorry about that. No, the first one is, I mean, you seem to have good numbers at receiver, tight end, and back. I mean, do you feel good about the guys that you have in those groups going forward? And then the second part is, do you feel like, I mean, there might be a chance that George is back sometime in 21?
Yeah, obviously, I think there's a chance he's back in 21. I mean, we've had kids that have ACL injuries. I liken it to Divide was an interesting case. I think Divide got his when he first got here. He was the third day of spring practice, and he didn't know our defense, but he was going to help us. And he came back. I think he's cleared to go somewhere around Florida week. But the issue with Divide is he didn't know the defense. The difference with George is he knows most of the offense and he's played longer, so he's a little older. But all that's going to be dictated by Ron. We're not concerned with that right now. What we're concerned with, a great surgery and a great rehab. He's got a long career ahead of him, talking about George. So that's going to be a situation where the doctors make that medical decision. I can assure you of this, nobody in the country has had as many ACLs that they've had to work with. I'm not talking about because we have a lot of them. I'm talking about because Ron Corson's been here since I was here. That's a long time. So he has seen a lot of ACLs, and the names that he has rehabbed is pretty impressive. And I know when NFL execs start talking about where did you do your rehab, that's one of the most critical factors. I reached out to Hines Ward, talked to him for a while. He's a receivers coach in the NFL, and the first thing he said was, number one thing everybody wants to know is, where do you do your rehab at? Well, when you do it at Georgia, it's super credible, and it's done the right way. And we got more ways to help George get back to himself than anybody. The timeline of that, who knows? That's not concerning to me right now. The players we do have out there working, I think we got plenty of good players. I mean, at tight end, running back, receiver, yeah, it hurts. It definitely hurts. But, the positive, I guess you could find in any of this is that would you rather have found that out now, or would you rather have found that out a week before the Clemson game? And it's tough for George, but he's going to be on the mend and on the healing side as opposed to going through anything, next year in the season. He's going to be on the mend rather than having it happen immediately.
All right, let's go to Palmer Toms, and then we'll go to the red and black, either Jake or Drew. Palmer?
Yeah, Coach, you mentioned some of those guys that have historically recovered from an ACL injury and done their rehab here at Georgia. Do you have any of those guys reach out to George, maybe to check in on him and give him some words of encouragement?
Yeah, Ron's done a great job of that. I know he reached out to Nick Chubb, who's, dealt with this, obviously, Zamir right here in-house. And then I think, he was reaching out to Todd. I don't know that he ever connected Todd Gurley with him or not, but, we've done a lot of that. And I think George appreciates that. He understands that he's got some work ahead of him.
Hey, Coach, speaking on some of the opportunities that come up, whether through injury or players leaving, have you seen any of the young players, early enrollees, or players who didn't even have a spring last year that have stepped up this spring? Amarius Mims, Broderick Jones come to mind on the offensive line, but have you seen anyone really stepping up that's young?
Yeah, I think all those guys are doing a great job. They work really hard. I'm excited about them. That's, I'm hoping that the I call it frustration, but it's really growth. The growth pays off in fall because we have so many kids going through this for the first time. And when you have 16 mid-years plus the freshmen from last year, just a large part of your team is really young. And it seems like you're saying that all the time, but that's what college football is now. How fast can you get your players acclimated and ready to go?
All right, let's take one question from JP Smallins in Providence, Rhode Island.
Sorry about that, Coach. I think you probably can guess who I'm going to be asking about.
Yep.
Yeah, you know it. Okay, so just what has he been able to do, Xavier? Just kind of building off his play in the bowl game and just what he's been able to show in the spring this far.
Well, he's a hard worker. He's trimmed some of his weight down. I thought he gained some confidence in the Cincinnati game. He got to play in a tough environment against a really good defense. And the best way to improve at the point he was at was to go play. So he's been out there this spring competing. I think he's doing a lot better with the mental side of things, like picking it up. Coach Luke's really challenged him to play with more energy and more passion. He's one of those guys that he doesn't show it a lot. He doesn't play with a lot of emotion, and sometimes you want that emotion to come out and show some personality when you have a good block and when you compete really hard. But he's gained a lot of confidence, and for a kid that didn't get to go against probably the same caliber of competition week in and week out in high school, he's adjusted really well, and it's just a joy to be around.
All right, great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we got a couple more minutes, so let's just open up. Anybody got a question? Go ahead and fire away.
Kirby, last week you said the offense was kind of winning. How about this week?
Offense is winning.
So what's wrong with the defense?
Got to get better. Got to grow up. I don't think it's a lack of effort. They're just ahead right now, and that's okay. It's not like it's us and them. It's a we, and we will get better. And who better to get you better than a team with talented, experienced quarterback and pretty good skill players. And hey, it's a lot of guys to replace. On defense when you got 5-6 guys on the back end all new. So that's the drills are not set up to be an advantage, for the offense. We don't really know much until you have the first scrimmage and you have to go out and tackle. But I would say they're definitely ahead right now in terms of execution and doing it right.
Kirby, Ray Goff was talking last night, comparing you to Will, and he was talking about Will being such a physical, dominant guy. I know you guys just only briefly overlapped, but was there a time? Were you one of Will's victims as a young guy? Because from what Goff said, that was kind of his thing, was hitting people pretty hard in those practices.
Well, I played defense, so if he hit me, it was probably because he closed his eyes or something. To knock me out, he would be knocking the other guys out. But I didn't. I don't have a lot of memories here with Will because I was a freshman and didn't play and redshirted and went home every weekend. So we weren't in the same age group. You know what I mean? We're on the same team, but I was over on the scout team the whole time and he was playing. So there wasn't I didn't really get to know Will until I started coaching with him down at Boston State.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Go Dogs.